community. To start with, if you could just please type in the chat box just to make sure you can all hear us okay. Excellent. So I think you can all hear us. If the audio does cut out at any point, just type a message and we'll make sure we get that sorted. To kick off, I'll just introduce ourselves. So I'm sure I've spoken to many of you before. So I'm a senior account executive here at Genesis. So we've been working with SAIF for coming up to sort of 2 years now, giving support to sort of PR, marketing, social media and websites. And I'm here with Craig, who's a senior account manager.
Hi everyone.
So if you have any questions as we go through this webinar, please feel free to type them in the chat box. We'll answer them as we go along. It's also a good opportunity to share your experiences. It's really helpful to get some insight from you as well. And I think often we find there's some good discussions that go on between people who attend the webinar, and that's always really great to see, and again, really helpful. So just to kick off the agenda for this afternoon, we're going to start by talking about going back to basics and why marketing is important. I'm sure all of you have experience of doing marketing, but it's just sometimes helpful just to put it all in perspective and just go back to the basics so we're all on the same page. Then the main portion of the webinar will be about engaging with the community. So we'll be looking at media relations, events, how to really get involved in your community to promote your firm and your businesses. So this will be, as I said, the main element of the webinar, and we'll hopefully be able to share some useful insights and general sort of tips and hints and best practice. We'll then look at 5 things to consider. So just some general pointers in terms of your overall marketing. And we'll try and leave 5-10 minutes at the end to have a general discussion and answer any questions that you have. But as I said, if you have questions as we go along, please feel free to put them in the chat box so we can answer those as well. So I'm going to hand over to Craig, who's just going to start by talking about why marketing is important.
Thanks, Tim. So yes, we thought we'd start just by giving a brief overview of why marketing is important to your business. And obviously, as Tim said, all of you do it already, so you're aware of the basics and why you need to do it. But we thought it might be good just to recap on some of the basic pointers. Essentially, marketing is important because it helps promote your business in the community. I think it's important to stress that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Every business will be different because every community is different. So it's really about increasing awareness of what your firm does in a local community, building those relationships with third parties, and identifying, understanding, and meeting the needs of your customers so that it can help drive more business through your door. Really, we want to showcase the benefits of what an independent funeral director can do, and the great work that you're all doing in your local communities, so that when the time comes and someone does need to use the services that you provide, they know where to go and who to use. So the benefits really of a strong marketing campaign, people do choose companies that they recognise. They're always more likely to go to those companies that they know rather than someone they haven't heard of. It's a great way to improve your reputation and build trust within the communities, which, as I'm sure you know, is a sort of key element of the profession that you're in, and it can really help you stand out from your competitors, which I think for all SAIF members is key. You have a strong story to tell. You're known in your local communities. You've often been working there for generations. It's family-run businesses, and you play an active part in the day-to-day running of your towns where you're based. And really, hopefully, throughout this webinar, we'll be able to give you some practical advice to show how you can stand out from the crowd and really sort of reap the benefits of those positive stories that you've got to tell. So over the next few slides, we'll be looking at some different types of marketing and PR. The main focus will be on community relations and business networking. And then we'll also look at media relations and some hints and tips on how to get releases and press releases and articles into local media, that type of thing. Obviously, part of the marketing mix nowadays as well is sort of digital and social media with websites and search engine optimization. That's not something we're going to touch on here. We've done it previously in another webinar, and it's really another sort of afternoon on itself, really. So this will be more the traditional approach and the traditional elements of marketing.
Thank you, Craig. So start off with, we're just going to look at what you need to consider first, so what's essential to your marketing. So really just setting the scene and make sure we lay the foundations for a strong marketing campaign. So first of all, we just want to talk about how you present your business, because this is a really important part of marketing. Your business or your brand identity, it needs to be clear and recognizable. And I know many of you have some really fantastic strong brand identity. So again, this is just sort of recapping, really. But it's always good to think about your brand and how people perceive it. So it should really reflect what your firm believes. So your independence, perhaps if you're a family firm, if you've been part of your community for 2 or 3 generations, you really want to try and encompass this as part of your brand, because it's a really strong message that that we're really good to get across. It's important to try and be consistent with your style. So this is how you use your brand, and I'm sure you will know about being very professional and making sure that you're coming across to the public in the correct way. Finally, don't forget to add the SAIF logo onto marketing literature and to your website. So this really shows to the public that you've achieved the highest standards. So it's really great to show that off, and I think it's a real benefit and something the public look for more and more. So on that note, just looking at the new SAIF logos, which I'm sure many of you have now seen. So we would certainly encourage you to start to adopt the new member logo over time. We developed these new logos because we really wanted to help them stand out, so that members of the public can more easily recognise which firms are a member of SAIF, and it helps you promote, as I said, promote your membership and everything that entails, from your friendly personal service, fantastic standards, and of course SAIF's industry-leading code of practice. So just to give you a few examples of the SAIF logo in use, we've taken Paul, who's the current president. So we've got here and put on his website, letterheads, and a booklet as well, just to give you an idea of how it looks. So we think it, as I said, it really does stand out. It's a bit cleaner, modern, and more easy to recognize. And I think that's really important as we come on to the marketing side of things. You want to make sure that, as I said, your brand is clearly recognisable and something that the public will remember. So, moving on to engaging with the community. This is the sort of main part of the webinar. And as I said, we'll hopefully try and give you some hints and sort of tips and some good practice as well as we go along. So to start with, we're going to look at why it's important. Again, I'm sure many of you know this and have experience of marketing. We thought it would be helpful just to recap as well, and hopefully get some insight from your experience, just to give us an idea as well. So it's really about meeting relevant people, relevant businesses, other sort of third-party groups, and getting to know them in your community. We're helping to get your name out there, your logo and your brand identity. with the real aim of building relationships. And I think that's really key for marketing. Whilst it is, of course, about promoting your firm and raising awareness, you also want to be building those relationships within your community, because I think that's really important, especially for yourselves as family-run independent firms. And I think you will benefit from knowing your community, a fantastic understanding of the community, sort of where it works, the businesses, and I know many of you involved in sort of local events and charity and fundraising, which we'll come on to later. So I think it's really important to play to those strengths, and that'll be really key in helping to sort of grow your presence, and hopefully help your business grow over time. So where do you start? It can be difficult if you, for example, if you've just opened a new firm, trying to think about where to begin in terms of your marketing. I think the first thing is to get to know your community. That's, as I said, it's really important to have a good understanding of your sort of the environment you're working in, the people, the businesses, and also think about joining local groups.
Stephen, I've just seen your question there. We'll be sending out the presentation after we've finished the webinar, so you can all get that via email. That's no problem at all. If you want to jot your email, or our emails at the beginning of the presentation, so we'll send it through to you. We'll get that from the SAIF Business Centre. It won't be a problem.
Yeah. So actually, just the webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch this over again. It will be on the SAIF website. So if you miss any bits or you want to go back over something, you'll be able to watch it online, or download it for a later date. So just back to the slide, your local chamber of commerce can be a really good place to start. There's many other local groups, from sort of Rotary clubs, and there's all kinds of more sort of hyper local, we would call them, so really sort of small groups, and more sort of county-wide. So it's good to do a bit of research, find out what kind of clubs and groups are out there, and find ones that are relevant for you. It's a great way of meeting other people, other businesses, and really just understanding your community. In terms of, I suppose, if you want a quick big win in terms of marketing, sponsorship can be a really good thing to do. So if you have local town competitions, or I know many places such as in Norwich do the Norwich in Bloom, these can be good opportunities to sponsor these events. Sometimes they're not sort of too expensive, so it can be worth doing, and you get that sort of immediate brand recognition for people who go to the event. Often you'll get your logo on the website, on their sort of marketing materials, and you'll get some really good promotion out of it. So that can be sort of quite a straightforward and sort of an early win in terms of promoting your firm, especially if you perhaps opened a new branch in an area where your firm is not very well known. It can be a really good way to sort of kick things off. Also, we were actually discussing this earlier, and I think many different towns and villages have their own sort of independence days where they celebrate fantastic local businesses. And as independent firms, these could be a very sort of fantastic opportunity for you to go along and get involved, and also meet other sort of independent firms and sort of learn from their experience. So these again it's good opportunities, not particularly sort of time consuming and quite cost effective ways of really sort of growing your presence. So in terms of things to consider when looking at these events, obviously it's important to choose events that are relevant to you, because I know you all have incredibly busy and very long hours during the day and the weekends, so I know time isn't something you often have much to spare. So really sort of be quite picky with the events you go to if you are short on time. Choose ones that you think will be sort of the most beneficial. And perhaps if you go to one or two different events, get a sense of which ones you think are more relevant and work better for you, and then you can sort of go to future ones. But if after attending perhaps one or two events with a particular local group. If you think it's not really right for you, then maybe look at some other ones. When you do find local community events, for example, that do work really well, try and attend them quite regularly, just to kind of reinforce yourself and your community, and also your firm. So on that note, it's a really good idea to take any business cards you have to these events. So particularly for networking, you can give out your cards with your details, and that's really helpful for people to remember your firm. They can go look you up and find out some more information. Of course, at these events, try and talk to as many people as you can. I know sometimes you end up just talking to a small group of people. Try and talk to lots of different people to really get your name out there. Talk about your experience, a bit about what your firm stands for, and really just promote some of the work you do and perhaps your experience of working in the community. And then it's good to try and follow up after these events. Try and connect with them on LinkedIn, for example. Many communities will have their own community Facebook pages, so that can be really good. Go and join the group, take part in the conversations, and see what the main topics of discussion are. Also with email as well, if you meet perhaps if there's local councillors or even local MPs who've attended the event, it's great to try and speak with them, and again make sure you have those business cards to hand. So just at that point, do we have any questions, or does anyone want to share any of their experience of events they've been, perhaps some that have worked particularly well? So just see if anyone wants to type anything in the box. No? If not, we can move on to the sort of next section, which I'll hand back to Craig. So he's going to talk about media relations.
So hi, yes. So media relations is really going to be one of the main ways to promote your business within the local community. Although it may take a little bit of time, it can be quite a cost-effective way of marketing. Because so long as they don't ask you to pay for anything, it's a good way to get some coverage and to get the name of your business out there. So the first thing to look at really are some ideas to promote your business. I mean, this is what we at Genesis do for a lot of members who phone us up and ask for some ideas. But I mean, a lot of you will have experience of this anyway. You could organise your own events, such as a new branch opening or a significant anniversary. We had a 100-year anniversary at the end of last year, for example. Or you might want to organise a public open day. Other ideas, for example, you could use National Awareness Day. So, for example, raising money for children in need, or if there's a dementia awareness, organ donation awareness, sort of piggyback on the back of national news items. That's a good way to really localise a national story that your local press might be covering, and if you're able to localise it in that way, it stands more of a chance of getting coverage. Your own charity fundraising, for example, choosing a charity of the year, or if the staff or yourself have a personal connection to a charity, then that's something that you might want to consider doing, and we'll come on to all these in more detail in a little while. And the last point there is just really might be more appropriate for the business pages of your local newspaper. So appointments and investments in your business. So new fleets of vehicles, for example, expanding your premises, or a new member of staff. That's just a few ideas there of the sort of stories that we do for members on a regular basis, and hopefully it gives you a little bit of an idea of what you can do yourself as well. Not necessarily an expensive way. It may take a little bit of time, but it should be quite cost effective. So now we're going to look at each of these in in on their own, just to give you a few more hints and tips. So first of all, we'll look at organising your own event. I'm sure many of you have done it in the past with opening new branches or holding an open day. But this will really hopefully be a brief overview, and we'll look first at developing a plan. So what you need to do, the type of things you need to think about, who to invite from the local community, what to do with regards to photography, a brief overview of how to write a press release and the type of things that you need to sort of get in there, and then also some hints and tips on contacting the local media, because I know that can be quite tricky at times. Being an ex-journalist myself, hopefully there's some good ideas that we'll be able to share with you. So developing a plan. I think first of all, the first thing you need to look at is just to really work out what it is that you want to achieve from your event, and really bear that in mind at all times to make sure that you're not deviating away from the overall goal. If you decide what it is that you want to do, you can always work backwards from there and make sure that you're ticking all the boxes and you get the most out of it that you possibly can. Start planning early. It goes without saying, really, but don't put it all together at the last minute. Try and think 2 or maybe 3 months ahead so you can invite the right people and get everything in place. Time scale and budget is obviously very important. These are both going to be limited, as Tim's already said. We appreciate everyone's very busy. You won't have a huge amount of time, I would imagine, because you've still got the day-to-day running of your business, so that needs to be borne in mind. And similarly with budget, it's obviously not going to be don't want it to be too expensive for you, so that's something that needs to be remembered. And then resourcing in terms of the number of staff you want to use at the event, type of thing, that probably all needs to be thought of, just so you can have a nice, well-run event. So in terms of the type of people that you might want to invite from the local community, you could look at, first of all, I mean, with mayors and councillors, they're usually cool. We have a lot of success in the past of inviting them along to branch openings or new premises, that type of thing. You really want to look at maybe other people you want to try and engage with, so representatives of the church, representatives of certain charities. You could also invite the media along. There may be a chance that they come along. Quite often now they're quite tied to their desk, but there's no harm in asking them along. You also might want to think about inviting members of the public along as well. It obviously depends on the type of event that you're running and the amount of space that you've got. But if you were having an open day and you wanted to showcase the type of facilities that you have and the type of service that you can provide, then inviting members of the public or leaflets somewhere may be the way that you want to go. The other thing to mention maybe is charities. If you are fundraising for a charity, or there's a particular charity in your local area that you think might want to work with, then again invite them along and see if they've got time to come along and take a look at what you do and the services that you provide. One key area of organising an event is the photography. You really have 2 options for this: booking a photographer or doing the photography yourself. Obviously, there's pros and cons to each. I mean, the pros of booking a photographer are that it's obviously going to be high quality, and you don't have to do it yourself. There'll be someone there dedicated to taking the photos, and if that's the case, it's obviously important to give them a clear brief and outline exactly what it is that you want them to do. If you've got certain photos that you want them to take pictures of, then maybe give them a list, and also if there's any certain guests you want them to get pictures of, make sure you give them the names so they can go and find them and take the pictures. It's obviously important for you to get out of it what you want. You're paying them for a service, so it's important that it's well planned. I mean, the main con really is the cost implications. It's really around £100 to £150 per hour for a photographer. but if they're going to be images that you can use on your websites, in other promotional material, and also in any press releases that you send out about the event, you may feel that it's worthwhile. But if you do decide to organise the event yourself, if you do decide to take the photos yourselves, the modern smartphones are perfectly capable of taking high quality photos that are good enough. But there are sort of maybe a few pointers that you should think about. First of all, especially indoors, lighting can be a bit of an issue, so you may want to sometimes it's quite difficult to see what the quality of the photo is like on a small screen. So getting a number of photos with flash on and off is recommended. Try and compose the picture in different ways, but remember, if you can, to include your branding. Don't want it to be too obvious, so that it's right in the foreground, but maybe in the background, just behind everyone, just in subtle ways where you could include your branding. Take photos from different angles to make it interesting. Usually, I'm sure you've all seen them, you get a sort of a line-up shot and a lot of photos, but if you can find ways to make that a little bit different, it's always good and interesting, just to capture people's eye. And then remember as well to get important guests in the photo. Take down who they are and their roles, and don't forget to include them if you want to use them in your photo. And we have some examples coming up here of high quality photos that we've used in the past, just to give you an idea really of composition. So the first one on the left here is Bowley and Gallagher. Was I think they were merging branches.
Yeah, so it's a new branch opening. He says that they've got a really great shot at the building with their sort of brand across the top, and they also had Terry and Paul from SAIF joining, and Alan, I think, as well. So again, it was really nice photo of the guests and the SAIF president and everyone at the front. And then on the right-hand side, I believe was a new branch opening in Oldham, where they had the mayor come along and open it. So yeah, these both got, I think, some good coverage. And I think, as Craig's highlighted, photography is really important. And we'll touch on it a bit more later on when it comes to sort of writing a press release, as often the photo can, in fact, be sort of more important on that front.
I think another thing to mention with photography as well, and it's a bit obvious, but I mean we see so many photos like this, that it does just have to be in focus, and if everyone is looking at the camera with their eyes open. I know that seems like a bit of a silly thing to say, but quite often, sometimes we'll see photos and they won't quite be up to the desired quality that newspapers and websites would require.
And I think that, as we sort of touched on, it is understandable. If you're at an event, there's lots going on, you're very busy running around meeting people, and it's understandable, in a rush taking photos. But if you can, just try and take some good photos, because not only, I think, as Craig touched on, can you use them for your press release, you can use them again later down the line if you're giving presentations or you're at events. So having sort of a good set of stock photos that you can have can be really helpful.
So moving on, we thought we'd just give you a few hints and tips about writing a press release for the local media and how to contact your local media. I mean, obviously this is where we can provide advice as well. If you have any questions or you need anything done, you can give myself or Tim a ring, and we can provide sort of help for you on this front. But the key really, I think, is, as we've sort of stressed a lot of it, is not to leave it until the last minute. Make sure you plan it in advance, and just so that it's not a last minute rush. Also, sort of research your local press. So obviously you'll know which local papers you want to target. You know the area that you live in, but there may be a particular journalist who covers your patch. Where possible, try and get a name, give them a call, and chat through with them what it is that you're doing and what it is that you could send them on your event. It may be as well, for example, that your event is more suited for business pages of your local newspaper. So maybe see if they've got a business editor or a business supplement, something like that, where instead of the news pages, it might be more appropriate to try and get it featured in there. It's really just about finding the right target audience and finding the right angle for how your press release can be used. But again, as I say, this is where we can come in, and if you're unsure, just give us a ring. In terms of the release itself, obviously it's going to be about your event, so about your opening or about your charity fundraising, and it's important to keep it quite short, quite sharp, and to the point. No more than probably, I'd say, 1 or 1.5 sides of A4. Now, obviously, like yourselves, a lot of journalists don't have time to read reams and reams and reams, so anything sort of short and snappy to the point will be gratefully received. And also, it's important to try and not make it sound too much like an advert. If it's too promotional, or if it feels too promotional, then it won't get used. But as I've said, if you write something and you're unsure, just send it across to myself or Tim, and we can give you some few tips on that and advise on the best way to go. As Tim's already said, photos increase the chances of getting your press release used no end. A good high quality photo can really help. I mean, take as I said, I used to work in the regional press, and we were all always desperate for good high quality photos. So anything that you can send through on that score will be gratefully received. Just a tip on when to call journalists and when to phone. I usually try sort of between 10 and 11 o'clock in the morning, just because that's the time when they'll be putting together their news lists, and they may be looking for stories to feature in the next day's edition. So that's probably a good time, rather than at the end of the day when they're all close to deadline and they're all very busy trying to get the pages out for the next day. The earlier you can call them, the better. But I would probably say as well, just to avoid Monday mornings, as I'm sure like you're all catching up from the weekend. Tim, is there anything else you'd like to add on?
Yeah. So I think as Craig's touched on, giving a quick call is it's a really good opportunity, because they'll receive dozens and dozens of press releases every day. So if you give them a quick call, they can put a voice to the release. But I mean, don't be sort of too persistent. I mean, hopes they will run the story. But if not, give them a phone, 1 or 2 sort of phone calls. But as I said, there's loads of different sort of local papers. You can try the more regional ones as well, and as well as also sort of the local magazines, so local parish magazines, local parish papers as well. So make sure you sort of hit all of those ones. But I think that's sort of probably the key advice on that front.
Also, try and make it as personal as possible. Let them know how long you've been working in your local community. Let them know the type of services that you're providing for people. And that's really important. I mean, their readers are local people. They want to know about how it's going to affect the local community and what you're doing. So, in that sense, really try and personalise it as much as you can. And we've got some examples coming now of just some coverage that we've had of previous openings. So this was P&S Gallagher and Bowley. Again, you can see the photo there, and a small piece in the business page, I think it was, of the local press. And again, another piece. I think it's the same story actually, but this one was on the on a local website.
It's also worth mentioning, if you're looking more at sort of networking in the industry, the trade press can be a really good option as well. So we, as well as doing consumer sort of press releases, we also send things to publications such as Funeral Services Times and the Funeral Services Journal. And from my experience, they're very friendly, and they're very to get new content. So if you go on their websites, you can find their email address, or if you'd like me to sort of look it up for you, I can send it across to you. So they've got a great website, and if you got a new branch opening that you want to share with other people, other SAIF members, other people in the industry, it is worth sending it across to them as well. But as I said, if you'd like sort of contact details for any of those magazines, I'm sure many of you might know them, might know people who work there personally. But if not, I'd be happy to send those across. So moving on to charity support and fundraising, this is sort of another aspect of marketing we wanted to touch on. I think we've gone through quite a bit in terms of media relations. So if you've got any questions, please, as I said, put them in the box. We'd really like to hear from your experiences as well, of if you've done an event, sort of what worked well, what perhaps didn't work well, advice for other SAIF members from your experience. Because as I said, that sort of really is invaluable feedback. So if you want to, next minute or two, type in a few questions as I go on to the presentation, we can come back to them as well. So in terms of charity and fundraising ideas, I think this is a really good one, particularly for SAIF members such as yourself, because it really ties into what you're all about, which is supporting your community and being part of your community for several generations. So I think that working with sort of local charities, helping to raise money and support their really important causes, as well as helping to get your name out there, is can be sort of a good option and quite a rewarding option as well. So one option, you can choose a charity of the year. So here at Genesis, we have our charity for the year that we support, we support them in our case with providing sort of PR. But you could do something similar, have a charity, perhaps a local mental health charity or bereavement support charity. So you could do perhaps events throughout the year to raise money, or as well as sort of raising money, help maybe going in for a day or two or supporting them and donating your time. As I said, it's great to find a charity that you're really passionate about, because I think, as well as being obviously very rewarding for supporting a cause, in terms of marketing your firm and getting that, sort of, particularly if you want to try and get some coverage in the local paper, that personal side of things is really important and can make a real difference. It's also, there's lots of national awareness days, which I'm sure you see. Almost every day there's a particular sort of awareness day. So it's a good opportunity if you wanted to get involved in some of those. So again, you have, I think, sort of bereavement support day, mental health days. There's sort of days about sort of cancer awareness. You've of course got the really big national events such as Children in Need. So if you want to perhaps get involved and do some local fundraising in your community, take some good photos, send details across to sort of local papers, and they often do sort of big spreads on sort of fundraising in the community. So that's a good opportunity again to promote your firm. Another area which is very popular is people taking on sort of a challenge. So recently, Paul, the president, he canoed the Caledonian Canal. So he raised to help sort of raise money for the mental health charity Mind. So it's, again, he did that over a weekend. So he set them sort of a challenge, and they did it as a family. So trying to do something sort of unique or a bit different, sort of a really nice, strong story, which helps to promote the kind of positive contribution you have to your community, and also helps to raise awareness of your firm if you're you can get some coverage in the paper, or you can put details of it on your website and social media as well. As I said, I know you're often short on time, but if you don't want to perhaps do a challenge or something, you can just donate your time to a local charity and help them out, perhaps over one weekend. That's something we see quite a lot as well, and it's very rewarding, especially if you get sort of your staff involved. So that's one area you can think about. So with regards to things to consider, as we've mentioned, choose charity you're passionate about. You can have more than one, because there may be different causes you want to support. Talk to your team, see what charities they would like to support as well. and try and include them in all your sort of fundraising activities to make it a really sort of firm-wide event. And as I said, you can have a sort of unique challenge, something different. But speak to your team, see what they'd like to do, and look at other examples. Get inspiration from what other businesses have done. That can give you sort of a good idea as well.
I would say a good tip for choosing a charity possibly could be if you've got a personal connection to that charity, or if a member of your staff has a personal connection to that charity. If they're happy to talk about it, maybe they've used the services of that charity in the past. It just brings in that human element that the media really are quite drawn to. If you're happy to talk about your experiences and why you're supporting that charity, that's really it's really quite key and a good way to get some good coverage.
And I think as well, when you do support local, they're very keen for the help you provide, and they'll put, if you write sort of a press release or details about it, they'll often put it on their website as well, so other people in the community who are trying to find out about that charity will see that you've been involved. And if you've got your sort of your brand on there and everything, they'll see that you've helped raise money for them, and it just helps to sort of get your name out there. And I think, as you know, most businesses will have a connection with a charity. So when you do go to these sort of local community events and conversations, and you meet different people, you'll be amazed that other businesses, they'll be doing similar things, and it's a great way of really getting your brand well known in your community. And just going back to sort of photography and sort of the media relations side of things, this is a photo from Paul's canoe trip. So he took some really great photos over the weekend. He was fortunate with the weather, so he got some lovely snaps of him and his family. And as you can see here, they got a really great bit of coverage in the local paper. And interestingly, the photo is actually the focus of the story, you can see, and then they just got the details underneath. So often you'll find with a great photo, that will kind of be the main portion of the article, and they'll put some details underneath. So try and get some sort of lovely photos like that, and that can make a real difference in terms of getting that coverage. So does anyone have any questions about sort of the charity side of things or fundraising in terms of other sort of general advice and how it links into marketing? The next section is going to be, we're just going to briefly touch on advertising. I know it's something that many of you do. But again, I'd be interested to hear your experiences of fundraising, perhaps which charities you've been working with, or any other sort of community groups you support. So if you do have a few moments to sort of type any comments in the box, that would be really interesting to hear from you. If not, we'll go through the sort of advertising side of things, and then conclude with some general hints and tips, and leave a bit of time for questions at the end. Okay. I think there's a few people starting to type. So if you want to put in the questions, we can sort of come back to that in a second. But just going back to advertising, advertising is quite an interesting one because it's part of the marketing mix. It can be a really great way of making your firm. There are many different opinions on this because it can be quite expensive, and it can be quite difficult to kind of measure how successful it's been. So some firms will find advertising works really well for them, others sort of less so. So it really is sort of up to you in terms of whether you think it's appropriate or cost effective. So our kind of purpose here is just to give you some general advice and general sort of hints and tips. But I think it's really up to you to decide if advertising is something you want to focus on more heavily. In terms of where to advertise, there's so many different options. The most common sort of advertising we see is in the local paper. So in fact, we see sort of SAIF members advertising, and it's always interesting to see the messages and sort of the branding that they're putting across. That's sort of usually the most typical advertising that we've seen from some SAIF members and funeral directors more generally in the industry. But you also get county magazines, lifestyle magazines, so they can be a possible option as well for advertising. And of course, more local parish magazines, and these are of course a lot sort of cheaper to advertise in, but again they don't have as big a reach. But then the people who read them will be very relevant, they'll be in the community, so it may be exactly the target audience that you want to try and get your messages across to. Of course, online there's many different types of advertising, from sort of having moving images and banners on websites to social media advertising on Facebook and Twitter. That's a really interesting and quite a growing area. But I think, as we said, this is more about this webinar is about the traditional offline marketing. So we'll do a sort of a separate session on the online side of things, as I'm sure that's something you'd be, many of us would be interested in learning more about. In terms of a few things to think about, often don't sort of necessarily, if it's a new publication, book a whole series of adverts. Try and think about just doing perhaps one or two to sort of see how it works, and don't be afraid to change. If you don't feel it's working, perhaps stop advertising and look at other publications. And if you feel the price is too high and you don't think it is worth it, then just say no, and try and sort of negotiate a price. So if you don't feel it's working for you, then perhaps try something different. So in terms of the types of advertising, there's the sort of local press adverts, as we just touched on, but then you get more advertorials and sponsor columns. So this is an opportunity to perhaps comment on a particular issue whilst promoting your services. And many newspapers have sort of regular columns, so guest columns. So this could be an option for you if you sort of ask about them. If you see them in a local paper, see if one becomes available. So that could be an option for you to perhaps write your thoughts on a particular issue, and also a good way of sort of promoting your firm. As I said, you've then got the sort of online, the social media, and the Google AdWords. Again, they can be a really sort of cost-effective way of getting your brand out there, with more people searching for funeral directors and more generally online. So perhaps that's something we can sort of come back to in a sort of a separate session. So in terms of advertising and what to think about, I think, as we touched on at the start, make sure you've got your brands really well in place. You've got a strong brand identity, because as you are paying for the advert, you want to make sure you're getting your money's worth, and you've got the right design, the right messages. Think about who you're trying to reach in terms of, if you're trying to sort of focus on consumers, think about sort of the right publication to go with that. And try and get feedback as well on the advert. So if you speak with other people in your team, or even people outside of your firm, to get their view on an advert, see if it's persuasive, and that can be really helpful to get that kind of outside input. Of course, I'm sure many of you already do. Don't forget to ask clients how they found out about you, and that's one way of measuring how successful an advert's been. You can ask if they saw your advert, or if they found you online, and try and keep a log of that. That can be really helpful. Also, look at where competitors are advertising. So if you've got other firms in your area, or say the co-op and other competitors, have a look at where they're advertising. That can be quite a good sort of clue as to the best places to look at. Again, it's difficult to measure success with advertising, which I know for many people they're therefore sort of they're less keen to put money towards it. But as I said, the best way really is to ask people how they found out about you, and just to try and get a sense of how effective it's been. So just looking at the summary of the pros and cons of advertising, I'm sure you will have many different views on this. So, for example, on the pro side, it is guaranteed coverage because you paid for it. You know the advert's going to go in. Whereas with a press release, you don't know whether that's going to get picked up. You also have much greater control with the advert. You can see, you can provide the messaging and sort of the design. Whereas with a press release, the local paper can sort of change things around. And finally, another pro, you have a much larger reach with an advert because depending on how much you want to spend, you can put it prominently at the front of a local paper or magazine. Whereas a press release, you're not entirely sure where it's going to appear in the paper. So I've just seen we've had a comment here coming in. So we supported our local hospice and staff members have taken part in various fundraising events. Let's get local press coverage. Oh, fantastic. There we go. So good example of getting local press coverage by doing something a bit different. That's really great to see. So you've got your team involved. It's obviously fantastic to supporting local charities and your local community. And if you can also use it to market your firm, get some sort of more awareness, that's sort of really great as well. So if anyone else has got other sort of positive experiences, it'd be really fantastic to hear about them. And if after this webinar you do try some sort of challenges or you do some fundraising for particular charities, do come back and let us know how you got on. I'd be really keen to sort of find out how you found it all. So just going back to the slide and looking at sort of the cons and the arguments against advertising, the main one, I think, as we touched on, is the cost. Whilst you can sort of put in a really good sort of negotiation when it comes to advertising costs, for smaller firms, it can be quite a big expense. And as we said, it can be difficult to measure how effective it's been. And with advertising, it can be quite easy to ignore. Local papers, relying more and more on advertising, which means there's more adverts appearing. So it can be quite easy for people to sort of flick past them without taking note. Whereas these sort of press releases and charity stories, because they have that kind of human interest, I think people are more likely to sort of read it. And again, you've got more chance of getting your messages across. Is there anything else on advertising, Craig, you'd like to add, or should we move on to the last few slides?
No, I think that's fine. We'll move on now to sort of 5 things to consider, which is really just a bit of a summary of some of the things that we've been discussing, and hopefully just sort of 5 tips that you can, if you take anything away from this webinar, hopefully these are 5 things for you to think about. So first of all, really, no matter what you're doing, make sure there's a plan in place. Don't rush into it. Take your time. Speak to other members of your team. Get their input, and really try and drill down into what you want to achieve from your marketing. Sort of always have that in place from the start, and maybe work backwards. Sort of work it out what it is that you want your marketing to achieve, and then work backwards from there. And then sort of find the event and the marketing that's right for you from that point of view. Always keep your end goal in mind. I think that's really important. That's something that we do for all our PR campaigns. We always have the evaluation in mind when we're running them, and that evaluation is ongoing as we go along. So if it's not working, we'll maybe try a different track, and that's something that I think sort of can work well for your marketing campaigns as well. If you think that it's not quite right, or there's something that's not quite working, then have another think, or speak to the SAIF Business Centre or ourselves, and we can advise on what's best to do and how to go about it. Number 2, as Tim's touched on previously, really have a consistent message. What is it that you want to say. For SAIF members, I'm sure it's the independent funeral director that you want to promote, the professionalism, the trusted service that you provide, and the key role that you play in the local communities. Really play on those strengths and be consistent with what it is that you want to say. As I said previously, you've all got great stories that you want to tell, and it's really drawing on those to make sure that you make the most of it, really.
So number 3 is to be realistic in terms of your marketing. It is sort of a long game. It's the long term plan. So obviously it's difficult. You won't necessarily get any sort of early wins. It is about building your brand over the long term. It doesn't, as I'm sure you all know, it doesn't happen overnight. So don't set your sights sort of too high. Of course, be positive and be optimistic, because you all do some fantastic work in your communities, and you do I know fantastic charity work and have some really strong brands and fantastic stories to tell about your firms and their role in the community. So really use that to your strength. But can be quite, it is an ongoing process over many months and years. So when setting goals and what you'd like to achieve, try and set sort of realistic and achievable goals, and hopefully over the months and years you'll see an increase in people coming to your firm as more people hear about you as well. So try a mix of PR and marketing. So we looked at I suppose 3 different elements today. We've looked at organising sort of your own events, from new branch openings, for example, attending networking events and meeting people in the community, and then as we concluded on sort of fundraising and raising money for charity. It's not one size fits all. You'll find one of these or 1 or 2 of these elements will be sort of more suited to you, something that you've got more experience in or you're more comfortable with. So make sure you sort of place your strengths in this regard. And if you can, try and do a sort of a joined up approach. If you are doing events and you're fundraising and you're going to networking events, again, just make sure that you've got that consistency in place as well. So finally, the final thing really is just to say to keep us up and to persevere. If you do have sort of a big marketing push, that's absolutely fantastic, but try not to do just sort of like a one-off. Try and keep it up and be consistent as well. I think sort of the repetition is really key in terms of marketing and promoting your firm. It's getting those messages out repeatedly, to really get your firm and your name sort of embedded in minds in your local community. So as I said, it is the long game, but I think if you have that strong brand and a really strong story to tell, I think you'll see some really strong benefits, to increase your profile and as a result help to grow your business. So I think that's sort of the last kind of hint and final hint and tip to give you. So we've got a couple of minutes left to answer any questions, perhaps to go back over anything, or if you'd like to have a bit of a discussion about things that from your experience that have worked well. We'd be really happy to answer any questions and hear your thoughts on this. As I said, I hope you have sort of found it all really helpful. I know we went through some of it quite quickly, but as I said, you can get a copy of the presentation, and please feel free to get in touch with us if you want to sort of talk through anything. But we'll just we'll wait here for sort of another 5 minutes if you want to put any questions in. Otherwise, thank you very much for taking part. So, just seen a question come in. any areas of advertising you would consider inappropriate for funeral directors in view of the nature of our business? I think, yeah, that's a really great question, and it's something that we're always thinking about as well. We're doing any sort of PR or any promotion of funeral directors, is that it, of course, the business you work in it was very sensitive and a very emotional time. So I think, as we touched on, it's important just to have your messaging very clear, very compassionate, very personal, very friendly tone, which I'm sure something you're all sort of very aware of in your day-to-day experience. Is there any areas of advertising? I think just think carefully about the publications. So I mean, local papers and things are fine. Local magazines. I mean, if you're advertising online on sort of websites and things, just perhaps sort of think carefully about which websites you choose. If they're sort of, I don't know, mental health related or bereavement support, just be careful if people are going on there for advice. They don't necessarily want to be sort of bombarded with adverts. So I think choose sort of local papers, local magazines, and just be really focused on providing comfort and support, and that you're there to help, as opposed to just sort of listing listing all of the kind of benefits and pros of your business. Really emphasise the kind of compassionate side of things. Anything to add on that, Craig? Did you say?
No, I don't think so, Tim. You covered that well. I was just going to pick up on Beck's point there about another webinar on social media and online marketing. We did do one at the end of last year, which probably still be on the SAIF members area, I think. Beck, if you want to pick that up, we could probably send you a link to that via email, I think. But we'll certainly be doing another one later on in the year, I would have thought, on social media and websites and everything.
And thank you, Mark. I'm glad to see you found it interesting. And as I said, it's great to see you're already doing that. And I'm sure many of you already, as I know, because we speak with many members every day, already have fantastic brands and doing fantastic marketing. So this was really just try and give you, some general hints and tips and bits of advice. But it is sometimes helpful just to go back to basics and think about your brand and things. And I'm really glad to see some of you doing some fantastic work. If you could provide your emails, we can probably, if you're happy to post your email in the chat box, then we'll take a note. If not, we can certainly contact you separately as well.